Good afternoon, everybody, especially those who are joining us on the live stream or may well be listening to this a little bit later on the recording. So, as a brief introduction, I'm Ben Geach. I lead the product strategy for Oracle Data Cloud. So, we've got a stellar cast here of industry experts across the publishing ecosystem, and they're going to be tackling some of the tough questions in the publishing world. And I'd like the panelists to introduce themselves. Perhaps you could say a little bit about who you are and what part of the ecosystem you work in. So let's start this way.
Okay, so hi everyone. I'm Elsa Domain-Griffiths from The Telegraph, where I head up commercial innovations. And right now, I'm really regretting wearing this massive jumper under these lights. So yeah, lesson learned for next time.
Absolutely.
Hey guys, I'm Vignesh Narayan. I lead media partnerships for MediaMath. Interesting having a buy-side person coming here on talking to publishers, but I lead, I work with SSPs, publishers, data partners across international markets in EMEA, APAC, and LATAM.
Perfect, great.
Hi guys, my name is Szymon Pruszyński. I work in Yieldbird, and we are one of the biggest global yield optimization companies. We support now over 250 publishers in all things programmatic, with a strong focus on inventory pricing and on additional demand implementation and management.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Emmanuel Ogden, Commercial Director for Freewill. We basically have two separate SSPs and ad servers, one for our TV full stack and one for our digital full stack.
Hi everyone, my name is Jericho Lemler. I'm working for Digital Ad Services. We are an operations unit for the biggest sales house in Switzerland called Goldbach, and also the biggest media house in Switzerland called Tamedia. And yeah, we're having a bunch of publishers around news platforms and classifieds, so excited to be here.
Perfect, that's great. So I think we should start with a question about how programmatic is taking over digital advertising. I think that we all know that it's fueled by advertisers who are enticed by the advantages of programmatic, such as the ability to reach consumers at scale. A broad question, I think, but I just want to start off with, as this shift continues, how would you feel that publishers feel about this shift? So maybe, Szymon, we can start with you.
So basically, it's, from my perspective, a very broad question, because you have big publishers like media groups present here today, but you also have middle-sized or small publishers like people sitting in home in Poland having a website about ski jumping, which generates 50 million page views a month on the high season. So they look at it from a different perspective, in my opinion. So the smaller ones will be happy about programmatic, because for them, they don't have enough sales power to go to the market, to agencies, to direct buyers and get some money from advertising. So they can plug in AdSense or any other SSP on their side and just make money out of it and just take care about the content, who, in my opinion, is good still, quality. But the bigger ones, they are also seeing programmatic as opportunity, but also with bigger amount of caution, mostly about control, because you don't have as much control over what kind of ads are on your site if it's not hurting your UX or something, but also regarding the prices, because still, especially in CE, programmatic is perceived as cheaper model of advertising, so they are used to selling high CPM campaigns for their direct clients, and they really have to understand and try to figure out a way in which they can sell programmatically, but also for high CPMs, and not devaluate the inventory they have.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think that it's good to appreciate there is a long tail of publishers as well, and that often the solutions that we develop may be for the bigger ones as well. Emmanuel, do any of those points resonate with you?
Some do, and a couple don't. So from a broadcaster perspective and a premium publisher perspective, yes, the open marketplace, you could say the broadcasters have been very hesitant in terms of, entering the programmatic world, although the programmatic world has evolved over the last, let's say, 3 to 5 years quite extensively. However, with developments such as Programmatic Guaranteed that enables them to work in a programmatic capacity that gives them that level of control, it has effectively excited them. And, most of these broadcasters nowadays are now seeing this as, the opportunity to drive obviously incremental spend from, agencies and advertisers, especially where those buyers want to get scale in terms of the large screen.
That makes a lot of sense. And Emmanuel, any more to add to that?
Yes, so for us in Switzerland is a really small company. So for us, programmatic advertising was a door opener to the whole world. We were able to not only get Swiss customers and Swiss agencies, we got a lot of international campaigns that we didn't get before. So yeah, this is actually a very good opportunity for us to do more international revenue. And if we have a look back in Switzerland, we started programmatic like 6 or 7 years ago. We sell now at the media or at Goldbach 25% only through programmatic. If you have the slides in mind that we saw at the beginning, the programmatic share in Europe is 75%. So yeah, there is still some work to do for us, but we see a big opportunity also with programmatic guaranteed, and yeah, also the open marketplace and private marketplace.
Great, so some work to do and some regional variations as well there across Europe particularly. Great.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So we all know that there's huge consumer demand for quality content. And I'd like to ask the question, sort of, what are the key factors and the key challenges that publishers face monetizing their quality content in the programmatic world? So Elsa, perhaps from Telegraph, a producer of high quality content, perhaps you'd offer your view.
Yeah, so I think there are a couple of different challenges facing premium publishers and all publishers, I suppose, in the programmatic world. And you know, personally, from what we found, they range from brand safety through to commercialization above the cookie, through to transparency, and then all the way down to real metrics that matter, aside from the baseline click-through rate percentage, which so inherently favor the platforms out there as opposed to publishers or premium publishers. I think something that we've seen more specifically over the last year or so has been this approach, this blanket approach to brand safety, which are hygiene factors put in place to, I guess, really police the long tail or the darker side of the web without any real, I guess, strategies or differing strategies put in place for the premium publishers out there. So yeah, that's something that we're definitely noticing at the Telegraph.
Because as I guess consumers consume in a variety of different media types, there are those sort of more fringe elements of the publishing landscape which are potentially even creep into being competitors with you in that case. Great. Vignesh, perhaps I could get your opinion.
I think I'm just going to go a couple of more steps back in the sense that I feel like, one, there is actually complete lack of transparency into what advertiser goals are for the publisher, which actually does not drive the right results. Number two, the advertiser has no visibility into what segments and what content actually work well for the advertiser. So there is that lack of visibility into what they're doing. And obviously, the third one is going to be the fact that the middlemen, the vendors and the tech companies in the entire supply chain end up cannibalizing the working media dollars, which could have actually gone to the publisher and resulted in much better ROI for the publisher. And coupled to this, you add ad fraud. I think these are fundamental challenges, I think, which plague the industry. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that we've got a couple of more specific questions on the challenges later on, especially with regarding ad fraud, which is obviously a big issue and has become big news among the industry recently as well. And lastly, Emmanuel, is there additional points that you would like to cover on that?
Yeah, definitely. I think in terms of the challenges, while we appreciate from a broadcaster perspective, those barriers have been, you could say, drawn down, somewhat. When it comes to all buyers having access to their inventory, some of those challenges lie around, especially within the UK, like Clearcast, the clearing body for ads, ensuring there's a clock number associated to every creative, the broadcaster having to approve every creative, hence why they can't work across the open marketplace. Even, with that, you still end up within, you have a mechanism where the actual creatives have to be pre-ingested on onto the broadcaster side prior to actually being displayed to the user for obvious reasons, because they don't want to hamper their content. And then you also have to take into consideration for, any particular campaign, there may be, 1 to, let's say, 3 creatives. What happens if a broadcaster has accepted 1 or approved 1, and then there's another 2 or 3 that haven't actually been approved. So you end up with another challenge in that respect. And then finally, you also have to think about clash management. Within the broadcaster world, for instance, they can't serve a Pepsi ad right after a Coca-Cola ad. So those are quite simple, but yeah, that's the world they live in. So that's also another challenge for them.
So a load of restrictions that are layered on top of an already complex ecosystem, really.
Yeah, exactly.
Perfect. Yeah, great. Thank you. So changing the conversation towards user-generated content, I'd like to ask, how do content publishers really stand out? So perhaps, Jericho, we could go to you first.
Yes, so I can give you an example of 20 Minutes. 20 Minutes is the biggest news platform in Switzerland. 20 Minutes is for free, so everybody can read news on 20 Minutes. And we finance 20 Minutes with advertising. Mm-hmm. So agencies love to advertise with us or with 20 Minutes because it's real journalism. So there is quality on the website. And yeah, agencies and clients can be sure that they're not running on a page where a video is shown, for example, of, maybe with terroristic content. And so it's a brand safe environment because, in the wild west of the internet, sometimes customers don't know where they really run. So.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. And I think, with user-generated content, obviously, by its very nature, there's a limited set of parameters that you can put around it. Emmanuel, is that something that falls into your world? Yeah,
it does to a degree. And, I won't call out, particular publishers specifically, but, in terms of how they stand out, what I've seen over, let's say, the last, 18 months or so is that they've actually started to work with, perhaps 2 OVPs that actually have, content libraries behind them in order to complement, some of the articles and the work that goes across their site. I think that's one way to obviously enrich and enhance the amount of requests they can obviously send to buyers, especially in terms of the segments that they have access to. But in addition to that, they're actually complementing their whole site with additional feeds from various libraries. I think that's quite a good way for them to increase activity.
Yeah, I was just going to add to that as well. I think there's a big difference between quality journalism or journalism in itself compared to user-generated content. Journalism, especially the investigative kind or the lobbying kind, which we at the Telegraph have really, pioneered a lot of amazing initiatives over the last year from women in sport and women mean business and loads of other initiatives. I think we have to be careful to differentiate between content that has been harvested for scale, essentially, versus journalism that has been created for and written for readers with value and trust attached to that, and we're moderated, in a really effective way within that industry. And so I think for me, that's where brands can get that association from. And there is a real big difference between quality journalism and user-generated content.
It makes a lot of sense to make that distinction, absolutely. So let's talk about current and immediate concerns in the publishing ecosystem. So would you consider to be one of the #1 threats facing programmatic today? And if I can ask you to sort of turn it into a bit of action as well, how do you see the industry responding and overcoming those threats? So Shimon, perhaps I could start with you.
Sure. So basically, there was a lot of discussion today about privacy, about data, about third-party cookies. So it's a natural answer. But my perspective is a little different. In my perspective, in programmatic, one of the main issues is the level of dependency on third-party, either organizations or bodies like governments and private companies. Because when you have publishers, again, I'm talking about big premium publishers, but also the middle ones. And 1 or 2 decisions from companies like Google or from EU can shut down your business. This is difficult. And also the level of discussion that they can take to those bodies is limited. And again, one short example. I was here in London not longer than 2 months ago at Google office. We held a small event for publishers. And we talked with one quite big publisher from UK. It was a parenting forum. And a yield manager from this publisher approached us and asked us if we know about any changes around May, because their programmatic revenue shrank down by 30 or 40%. And it was not thousands of pounds, it was rather £1,000,000. And they couldn't get answer from Google why it happened. Did they just get really broad answer that it was because they were probably flagged as potentially not brand safety content? And it's a forum about children. So we have a lot of situations when pages are blocked because word of penis or something is appearing on it. So it's difficult to work when someone is throwing you rocks under your feet, and you're not focusing on basically improving quality of your inventory or implementing new products. You have to get compliant with GDPR, with third-party cookie, with Google first price auction model. We have to work on that, and the other companies are basically influencing your business and the way it follows.
Okay, so what would be the solution for that? Would that be things like being able to put frameworks in from industry bodies? Would that help?
Yeah, so for me, what IAB is doing is one of the solutions, but the other solution is basically what, for example, happens now in Germany as the answer on a cookie matter, on the GDPR matter, when basically companies from the markets start to combine forces and work together to find a solution other than the top walled garden solutions.
Okay, makes a lot of sense. Vignesh, from platform side, what's the top threat? I'm sure there are many on the list.
Yeah, I think the list can go on forever, but I think if you look at it fundamentally, I think there is the fact that there is misalignment in terms of incentives for different stakeholders in the ecosystem, where be the advertiser, the players in the vendor players, as well as the publisher. The fact that there are misaligned incentives which actually promote bad behavior and leads to lack of transparency. So in the end, the advertiser has no way of calculating an ROI and trying to figure out which partner actually adds value and which partner is not adding value. I believe that is one of the biggest challenges that we see in the ecosystem.
Absolutely. So sort of unpicking the value chain there. Absolutely. And Elsa, does that resonate with you?
Yeah, definitely. I think the other key thing that I think we as an industry have done in the past is sell advertising space and not our journalism. Yeah. There are a record number of people reading news and supporting journalism. And journalism matters now more so than ever. So why are we not seeing money flowing our way? I read a really interesting article last week from Tracy DeGroos over at Newsworks, and she pointed it out in a really simple way, in the fact that the digital, advertising ecosystem is just completely broken. It is dominated by an open marketplace which sells content as this one amorphous mass, without any real sort of I guess the word is without any real expertise put into the distinction between the attention of the quality of the context or even of the audience. And she said in her article last week that actually advertisers are finding themselves in this bonkers situation at the moment where some of them don't even know where their ads are appearing or if they're even being seen by human eyes. And that ultimately adds to distrust in our overall ecosystem. So I think advertisers, regulators and politicians are starting to wake up to that now, but it is pretty slow going.
Absolutely.
I think the fact that I think we, for a long time, I think there have been, these conversations have been going on for a long time. But I think the fact that we as a body need to come together to figure out what the solution is, supply chain is definitely broken. Incidentally, MediaMath has also recently launched an initiative called The Source, where we are building a completely transparent and accountable supply chain, where we're working with the stakeholders, the publishers, the SSP partners, and the advertisers to ensure that this supply chain is driven to deliver advertiser outcomes. And the publisher, the advertiser gets complete transparency into the complete supply chain in terms of costs, making sure that the audience that they're reaching is actually real, and the fact that the publisher benefits because he's currently seeing a rise in terms of his revenue. So I hope this initiative will something that we'll be able to build in these markets as well.
Oh, absolutely. So, yeah, I think taking your point about that the ecosystem is potentially broken in many places, we're still seeing technology and platforms evolving at a hugely rapidly increasing rate. So I wanted to ask sort of how can publishers better understand what to use and what not to use to be able to drive their business forward? Emmanuel, perhaps we could start with you.
First of all, a publisher definitely needs to have a CMP. It's quite, we may laugh, but I mean, even 18 months on after GDPR, you'll be surprised at the amount of publishers that don't actually have a CMP in place, and it makes things quite difficult for vendors like ourselves to obviously work with them. Yes, if they promote global inventory, yes, there is another revenue arm, but within Europe, it's crucial. Secondly, I would also advise, in terms of tech for publishers to use, a third-party verification provider of some sort within the chain. From our perspective, it's the publisher's job to ensure that their inventory is clean. We appreciate, when you look at, let's say tier 2s and tier 3 publishers, they utilize various means to enhance the amount of traffic that comes through to their site, which we understand and totally get. And we also appreciate that the cost of a third-party verification provider can be quite, substantial. However, if that's the case, my personal, view and suggestion would be that they work with a vendor, i.e. an ad server, that can potentially give them those, that element of functionality from a pre-bid and a post-bid, analysis perspective, which will then, clean up that supply chain prior to actually reaching, buyers and advertisers and agencies.
Yeah, makes sense. And on the theme of cleaning up and brand safety, there's a lot of buzz in the industry about context in general. In your opinion, what role does contextual intelligence play in a brand safety conversation? Elsa?
I guess keywords in themselves, isn't the perfect solution in a contextual sort of world. And I guess at the Telegraph, we've been trying to identify and push through with solutions of a contextual 2.0 technology that fits not only our own advertising, but also the brands and agencies that we work with. So that, I guess, is moving away from keyword statistical technology and more of a move to semantic technology, moving away from brand safety and more to brand suitability. So that's what we've been trying to do and will continue to do over the next few months or so.
Yeah, I love evolving the conversation to be more of a suitability and not a one-size-fits-all in this case. Vignesh, is that similar in the platform world?
I think so, yeah. I think context is becoming increasingly important, but I think context intelligence should actually go in much deeper rather than just focus on not brand safe content, but it's actually focus more on recommending what kind of where the audiences are actually going in and how can that be actually reflected in terms of an ROI driven brand safe environment for advertisers to actually advertise on. I think that's actually important, yeah.
Absolutely. Great. So we've talked a lot about the challenges for publishers here, and I think that what I want to finish with is a little bit of future gazing and looking a bit further out. So what projects are you working on that excite you about the future? And if I give you just a couple of sentences from each of you about what you're looking forward to in 2020, that'd be great. Should we start this way?
Yeah, I think for me is, I guess, just repeating what I said earlier around contextual 2.0, but it's really furthering that discussion and that strategy and that solution for us at the Telegraph, especially as we've heard from the earlier sessions around the monetization beyond the cookie that's going to become more and more important. So it's really about, for us, setting up a really incredible product for our brands, our agencies, and for our internal teams to use as we progress forward into 2020.
Great.
For MediaMath, I think the focus is going to be working with industry stakeholders, right, from advertisers, publishers, SSP partners, to actually provide the solution, the source project, where we are actually providing complete, transparent supply chain. I think that's going to be the focus for us next year, and then scaling this out in international markets, especially UK being the one. So hopefully we'll go work with the Telegraph also on this.
Perfect, great.
So for us, as this programmatic market is going a little into the advertiser market side, we want to take back a little control for publishers, and we're developing solutions to a little cross-engineer the bid trading algorithm and allow publishers to still maintain the proper pricing of their inventory, even with the first price auction model, plus give them a little more time to educate themselves and to stay updated on all the changes in industry, because we've talked about it. You can dedicate half daily time to just learn about all the things that's going on and still have to work on the heavy lifting, setting campaigns, taking care about blockings and everything else. So we want to make it easier for publishers.
Great, perfect. Emmanuel, what's on your wish list?
For us, it's programmatic guaranteed, which we're already working on. The core objective there is to make it a seamless process for buyers to truly transact with broadcasters, and explicitly show that the world of programmatic has evolved quite extensively. In addition to that, we are also developing tech around blockchain as we move into this world of or cookieless world that essentially uses a block graph, so buyers can actually target particular audiences in a safe and an efficient manner without data leakage.
Great.
Yeah, for us, we heard it a lot today. It's the cookieless future, or the end of the cookie. When we have a look into our inventory now, we see 50% of all inventory coming from users without a cookie. So that's a big challenge that we have to tackle next year. And yeah, I think we have to dig deep into what is happening on DSP side. We have to learn that as publishers, like really deep. And then we have to
happy to support.
Adapt. Nice. Yeah, that's
Great.
it for next year.
Perfect, thank you. So I'd like to thank our panelists for their insight today, and hopefully this gave you some food for thought about the challenges and opportunities that publishers have in programmatic. Thank you very much.
Thank you.